So my name is Barry Weisletter, and I'm a Federal Secretary of Socialist Action, co-editor of Socialist Action newspaper, and organizer of the Substitute Teachers Action Caucus in the Toronto district of OSSTF. Confession time. I've been involved in the Canadian labour movement for over 40 years. I learned some of my first lessons of class struggle unionism as a supporter on the picket lines of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers in the early 1970s. So, and that was when the post office main depot was right next to Union Station down on Front Street. Who remembers that? Okay, you were probably on the line with me. So, on behalf of the sponsoring organization, Socialist Action, Ligue pour l'Action Socialiste, I welcome you to this rally to defend the Postal Service and to defeat the attack on the public sector. This is endorsed by the Public Service Alliance of Canada, the Canadian Union of Public Employees Ontario, Greater Toronto Area Council of the Ontario Public Service Employees Union, Unite Here, Local 75, the NDP Socialist Caucus, and the anti-poverty group Put Food in the Budget. So, friends, here is the format for tonight's rally. Following my opening remarks, I will call on one of our Solidarity presenters because she has to leave early. And then I will introduce our special guest speaker, Brother Denis Lemblin. After his remarks, we will hear brief greetings from a number of prominent labor and community leaders. Then I will present an action resolution for your consideration. I will open the floor to questions and comments on the issues before us, not limited to the resolution that you will see. And I will try to maintain a gender-balanced speakers list. And when the meeting is ready, we will vote on the action proposal and conclude the rally. How does that sound? Okay? So let me begin by putting this in context. The scheme to curtail home mail delivery is part of a plan to gut the federal public sector, to shrink postal workers' pensions, to break a progressive democratic union, and to sell off lucrative parts of Canada Post Corporation to private sector vultures. This attack must be stopped. It is a watershed moment for the workers' movement across the Canadian state, and the need for mass resistance is great. The present assault on the Postal Service occurs in the context of a broad anti-worker offensive. The disappearance of thousands of full-time, decent-paying jobs puts pressure on unions to grant wage and benefit concessions. The layoffs at Electromotive Diesel and the planned closures of the Heinz and Kellogg's plants in southern Ontario add to the malaise, as will the elimination of over 8,000 letter carrier jobs if home delivery is cut. Laws hostile to the rights of education workers, I refer to Bill 22 in British Columbia and Bill 115 in Ontario, roused student protests and broad public dissent. Unfortunately, labor leaders gave way to the government's will. In 2011, the first year of the Stephen Harper majority government, there was a flood of back-to-work legislation against postal workers, Air Canada service workers, flight attendants, ground crew and pilots, and Canadian Pacific Rail engineers. Wildcat actions by Air Canada ground crew in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, and Quebec City in March 2012. And the following month, when Air Canada pilots organized a sick-out that was not sanctioned by their union, these were expected to generate a big anti-worker backlash. Well, despite the efforts of the business media, it did not. The Canadian Labour Congress, confronted by a staggering array of legislative attacks, responded with feel-good TV ads. You're familiar with the Fairness Works campaign? But, the assault continues, and it deepens. We see restrictive changes to employment insurance, the expansion of the highly exploitative, racist, temporary foreign worker program. We see Ottawa's ongoing resistance to the Canada Pension Plan reform. We see the punitive and anti-union bills, C-377, C-525, and C-4, with their arbitrary rules on financial disclosure to harass unions Yeah, I know it was defeated in the Senate, but you haven't seen the last of that one, mark my words. And they're obstacles to union organizing and a dramatic rollback of federal health and safety regulation. The latest federal budget steps up the war on workers, and it is what this dying, crisis-racked capitalist system absolutely requires to stay afloat. But what do workers require? I mean, apart from a socialist revolution, that is. We desperately need now a cross-country rallying cause for turning back this tide of reaction. Defense of postal services can be that pivot, and here's why. CUPW is renowned as one of the most militant democratic unions in the Canadian state. By means of an illegal wildcat strike in 1965, it won the right to collective bargaining for all public sector employees. It won above-average wage increases with strikes and walkouts in 1969 and the early 1970s. And further strikes in 1974 and 75 succeeded in gaining job security in the face of new technology in the post office. And in a 1981 strike, it won the right to maternity leave for its members, a gain that eventually spread to virtually all organized workers.
What about paternity leave?
Well,
Equal rights.
That's coming too, and that's in many union collective agreements, I'm happy to say. CUPW, without a doubt, has been in the forefront of solidarity campaigns with workers' struggles domestically and internationally for generations. It has legions of social allies, and it has a presence in every city and town. So my argument is, that's a good pivot. Now is the time to turn, now is the time for us to return the generous and exemplary solidarity of postal workers and to stop the onslaught against public services and workers' rights. And it's also a golden opportunity to chase the Harper Conservatives from office and to bust up the employers' offensive. The dire need and the very real possibility to turn this attack around on the corporate elite is posed. This is the time to convene meetings like this all across the country, in every workplace, in every school, labor union, NDP district association, social justice movement, neighborhood, and community. Urgently needed is a massive public information campaign, and it should be accompanied by mass rallies, picketing at federal buildings, petitioning at public squares, the occupation of government offices, walkouts at workplaces and schools, and rotating strikes by workers leading up to a general strike. That's what the CLC convention should be discussing when it meets in Montreal in May, in my opinion. And such a movement around this pivotal issue could help to rejuvenate the labor movement. And wouldn't that be a fine, fine thing? So, my friends, brothers and sisters, the choice is very stark. Defend home mail delivery and public services, or watch the accelerating descent into the hell of capitalist austerity. So I ask you this: are you ready to start fighting back now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you ready to stop that runaway train headed to labor hell?
Yeah.
Well, good, because that's what we're here to do. This is a rally to defend postal services and to defend the entire public sector. Now, with great pleasure, I'm going to introduce someone who unfortunately has to leave early, and she doesn't ever do this, but has to on this occasion. She comes out of CUPE, Ontario. She proudly celebrates her Jamaican heritage, and she is a vice president of the Canadian Labour Congress. Please join me in a warm, solidarity welcome for Marie Clark Walker.
Thanks, Mary. I just need, before I start on my formal remarks, to say I don't disagree with anything that Mary just said with respect to us making sure that this is the fight of our lives. But as far as the Canadian Labour Congress is concerned, in order for us to do that, in order for us to get to a general strike, and those who know me know that I've been preaching this for a very long time, we have to make sure that the public is on side. And right now, we have alienated the general public so badly, we have to do campaigns like the Fairness Campaign in order to get them to see that we're not just about picket lines, we're about much more than picket lines. So it's a start. Should we be doing this now? We should have been doing this 10 years ago. But the reality is, it's there now, and so let's try and use it to pull people together and get people to where we need them to be. Not just on the picket lines, not just invading and general striking, but in the classrooms as well. Making sure that the kids know what it is the labor movement has done. Making sure that our kids, your grandchildren know what it is the labor movement has done and what it can do when we're working in solidarity. So on that note, let me bring greetings on behalf of my other officers, but more importantly, on behalf of your 3.3 million brothers and sisters, many of them who work in the public sector, but a lot of them are private sector as well. And it's only together, working with public and private sector, will we be able to stand in solidarity and defeat the Harper government. And it's not just about the Harper government. It is about the right-wing conservative assholes. Sorry. They're everywhere. Every time we turn, they're right there. And we need to figure out how to defend ourselves. We need to figure out how to respond to them. And for years, we have been reactive in our response. We have to figure out how to be proactive in our response and get to them and get to the things that we know that they're going to cut before they do that. So let's now attack. Sorry, we got to attack Canada Post. Right? Canada Post Corporation? Yeah. Sorry, I need to tell you about these buttons too. So today, I'm wearing the button, and people kept coming up to me and saying, why are you wearing Save Canada Post? We need to get rid of Canada Post, because their idea is the corporation. When they see Canada Post, they don't think of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, they don't think of the letter carriers that are out there, they don't think of those people, they think of the corporation. So I had to spend time explaining to them, no, this is about saving our workers, this is about saving our jobs, this is about saving what we've built as part of the labor movement. So if you see people and you have this button on and they say something, you just explain, take the time and be nice. If they don't understand, they don't know, explain it to them. So let's expose Canada Post Corporation for what they really are. It's our responsibility to expose the truth. Our job is to expose the truth. The truth is, Canada Post Corporation has made money. They say 17 out of 18 years, I say 18 out of 18 years. The year that they claim that they didn't make money, they did, but they had to use that money to make workers whole, right? They had a pay equity lawsuit that they had to deal with, and they had to use that money to pay for what they didn't pay for in the past, right? They didn't make money that year because that was also the year that they locked out the workers. The same workers that have for years made sure that they made money. The same workers, and this is important to remember for later on, the same workers that they said were essential, so they needed to legislate them back to work, right? The same year that they say they didn't make money, they found millions and millions and millions of dollars for commercials on TV. They found tens of millions of dollars to buy out Purolator, right? So, the truth is, they're motivated by greed. The truth is, they want to privatize everything that comes into any kind of their spectrum, right? The truth is, Deepak Chopra, Stephen Harper, the chair of the Canada, what is it called? The Conference Board, are all friends. And they're all sitting there having each other's back. It's all about what they want. It's all about privatization, nothing else. Don't let them fool you. And I know if you're in this room, you're not fooled at all. But we need to let the general public know it is not about better mail service. It is not about the disappearing of the mail service. It's about privatization and greed and nothing else. The corporation also used its website to ask the general public what kind of future they envision for the Postal Service. And I know Denis will get into this a little bit later on, but 2 out of 10 people, so every 2 out of 10 people that were part of these focus groups and this polling said they wanted service cuts. That means 8 out of 10 said no, they didn't want service cuts, right? So all these things that they're doing now, it's not because this is what the general public wants, it's because this is what they want, because this is on the road to privatization. The last thing I want to talk about is the Canada Post Charter. Who knows what the charter says, other than the postal workers in here? Who knows what the charter says? Okay, so Canada Post is in violation of their own charter. Their charter says, Canada Post, in quotes, Canada Post will deliver letters, parcels, and publications 5 days a week, in brackets, except for statutory holidays, to every Canadian address, except in remote areas where less frequent service may be necessary due to limited access to the community. The last time I checked, Halifax, Oakville, Calgary, Ottawa were not remote areas. The last time I checked, it didn't say some addresses. It didn't say every other day. It said they would deliver every day to every address. And we need to hold them accountable to that. Denis will also talk about the innovations that have been available to them, and they're not taking. For that I say shame. Shame. Sisters and brothers, I, like many of you, stood in the cold days and nights when my brothers and sisters were locked out. Again, they were legislated back to work with Canada Post, the Canada Post Corporation, and the government saying that their services were essential, they were needed. Now, they're saying that they're dispensable. They don't need letter carriers, they don't need people to be delivering to people's houses every single day. So which one is it? Are they essential or are they dispensable? Which one? That's a question that they need to answer. So I'm here to say it's up to all of us to stand in solidarity with our CUPW family. It's time to tell the government to treat all Canadians fairly. Together, fairness does work. I'm fighting for all workers, I'm fighting for good union jobs, and I'm damn well fighting for my Canadian Union of Postal Workers, brothers and sisters. And I want to
And we're going to hear from other union leaders who are bringing solidarity greetings in due course. Marie has to leave because of other prior commitment, but I'm going to call on now our special guest speaker, and he'll take a little bit more time, I certainly hope, because there's more to be said about what his union faces at this critical juncture. And then we'll hear from the other greetings presenters and open the floor subsequently. Denis Lemlin was elected national president of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers in 2008. He has been involved in the union since 1979. Brother Lemlin was the second national vice president of the union from 1999 to 2008. As second national vice president, Brother Lemlin was responsible for the national education plan, including promoting awareness of union policies and the rights and duties of members as set out in the collective agreement. He was also responsible for human rights issues and the child care issue. He was involved in international solidarity work, particularly around Cuba and Colombia. Previously, Brother Lemlin was the Director of Education in the Quebec region of his union for 10 years. Working as a postal clerk in Sherbrooke, he was that local's vice president from 1983 to 1987. and he was also the coordinator of the Struggle 88 campaign. Originally from Chicoutimi, Quebec, Brother Lemlem worked in the textile industry before joining the post office and the Postal Workers Union. Please join me in a rousing welcome for the National President of the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, Brother Denise Galbraith.
So good evening, brothers and sisters and comrades and friends. So it's really a pleasure to be here and have a chance to talk with you. So I want to thank Barry to give me this opportunity. And I see many faces, different ages of people. So there's a lot of, I'm sure, a lot of history in this room, a lot of fight, a lot of people who stand up for the right of the human rights of all the people and the labor rights of all the people. So it's really an honor to be here tonight and have a chance to talk to you and talk to you about the Postal Service. But now I'm not sure what I want to say. I have to say because everything has been, the picture has been really laid out by Barry and Rick Walker about what's happening in the postal sector. But maybe I will start by thanking the City Council of Toronto. I think yesterday they adopted a resolution 42-2 to really try to stop the implementation of door-to-door here in the Toronto area. And it seems that the fourth brother vote for it. So thank you, Toronto. I think it's good. We already have support from Victoria, Vancouver, Charlottetown. There's more than 20 cities all over the country who are saying no to this change about the way people receive the mail. So thank you. And secondly, I want to talk about what happened yesterday. So yesterday morning, again, Canada Post went out and they have a press release saying that identifying what will be the first 11 places in the country where they will cut door-to-door, start cutting door-to-door. So they went out, and it's more than 100,000 citizens of this country that will be cut door-to-door services, and people will be hurt, and we really feel it's a shame that Canada Post start again and start to really cut service and public service to this citizen of this country. So it's a shame, and it's clear that our unions, we will fight back on this issue. But I think I will mostly talk about two aspects, about why exactly, what is this 5-point plan of Canada Post? I think it's important to understand it. Because there's a choice that Canada Post made. And the choice they made was instead of expanding services, instead of choosing innovating new ways to deliver mail or offer service to the public, they decided to cut services. That's the decision they made. And they made it clearly, knowing that it's possible to expand services. They knew about it. They know about it. They know it's possible to have banking. They know that because they had a survey. We want to have the survey. They don't want to share it, but we know in that survey they're talking about the fact that maybe it's a win-win situation to have a postal bank. And I will talk about it a little bit later about the postal bank. So they decided consciously to cut services. And we know they did it because of the Harper government. They didn't decide that by themselves. They have been ordered by the Harper government that the way to go for the Postal Service is to cut services to the public. That's the decision. That's the decision of the Harper government, and the proof is simple. on the 28th, January 28th, the second day of the, when the House came back, there was a motion by the NDP on the floor saying that, yes, we want the Postal Service, but we don't want this 5-point plan. We want to reject it. And they put that on the floor, and they lost, because all the Conservatives MP, they vote against the motion of the NDP. And they stand up, and they clap their hands at the moment they saw that the motion has been defeated. That's what the Conservative Party in this country is doing. They are destroying service to the public, they are destroying the Postal Service, destroying all the public service they have, and I'm sure we will talk about it a little bit later, people, about what's happening in the public sector, because they are going in negotiation right now. So that's a shame that this government is in place. This government has less than 40% of the support of the citizens of the country, and is really cutting all the service, and is really, really trashing the social net of this society. And it's why we have to defeat that government, and if why every time we have a chance, we have to say, shame on them.
Shame.
So there's 5 points. So the first one is the door-to-door delivery. So they said there's 5 million door-to-door out in this country. Citizens receive the letter or the mail at the door. And they want to say, okay, if we get rid of that and we replace that by boxes on the corner, you saw the video, I think all these Superman boxes there and all of that. So we'll save at some point maybe $300 million a year. So, but at the same time, they will cut the service. And the service is the most important thing, and it's the network. But the order they have, with that, they will save that money, but they will cut between 6,000 to 8,000 jobs. Good jobs in this country. That's a shame. That's a shame, because we need jobs. We know the non-employment is more than 7% in this country. We need good jobs. We need good jobs everywhere in this country. So they want to cut the good job. And the second thing they did on this plan is to raise the price of the stamp. But it's really a dramatic raise. It's going from 63 cents to $1 if you buy a stamp. And who is going to buy a stamp at a time? It's not the rich people. It's the people who want to send a letter. The people have to send something to the government because they need. So that's an attack on the people who have less, on the poor people and the working poor. That's what they want to do. So they raise the stamp, but they protect the big corporation, because for them, or maybe it will be 75 cents, because they are using the mail more than the public. And that's a shame too, because we have to protect. We found always to say, yes, the price of the stamp have to be good, but not at the extreme. And we are fighting against that too, that this extreme would be in place at March 31st. We're against that too, and we're fighting that. And after that, they said, we'll privatize all the weekends. So they say, we privatize the service to the public, the first level service of the public. Why? Because they want to eliminate good jobs and have jobs at the lower level. To create a cheap labor at Canada Post, and to really bring down all the labor movement and say, in Canada, what we need is not good worker. We don't need a middle class. What we need is poor worker. It's people who are every day having 1, 2, or 3 jobs now to survive because of what's happening in this country. And they say if people are working all the time, they won't have time to do politics. So that's what they're saying. If people say you're fighting for your day-to-day living, and for us, we'll dominate and give everything to big corporations with cheap labor. And after that, they said, the fourth point, so we want to have new technology. They already have new technology. I talked with people in Toronto here, they have new technology all over the country. Why new technology? To replace worker, to eliminate worker again. So it's this attack, it's this organized attack on the labor between this government, crown corporation like Canada Post, and big corporation in the private sector. We talk about what's happening in Ontario, it's happening everywhere in this country. And at the end, not enough, we will have to get more from the actual worker at Canada Post. We want, when we go to next negotiation in 2015 and 16, we want to get more from them. We want to have more. We want to cut the benefit. We want to cut the pension. We want to make the worker, everybody going down, down, and down. That's the goal of this 5-point plan. And at the end, what they will say, oh, everything is in place. We have cheap labor, the counter are privatized, we don't have door-to-door delivery, we have less worker. Oh, we can privatize. We can give this corporation to a big corporation who can run it better than the crown corporation. So that's the ultimate goal. That's the ultimate goal. It's always to say we can privatize crown corporation, and they're putting in place, maybe it can take 4, can take 5 years, can take 6 years, but that's the plan. That's the plan. Create cheap labor, raise the price of the stamp, and at the end say, we'll give that to the private corporation, and private corporation, what they will do, they will make profit out of it. So that's the scheme. That's the plan of Canada Post when they're talking about that 5-point plan. And it's clear. It's clear that the union won't accept it. And it's clear that the public of this country won't accept it, because at the moment they publicized that plan in mid-December, everybody was against it. We say here the Canada Post delivered bad news to Oakville. That's one of the places. It's the first place in the country they would change it, starting in November. And the mayor of Oakville, Mr. Burton, said, oh, we can do nothing about that because it's a change, people will adapt to it, and we have to save the post office and this kind of issue. So, but they all linked together to get the jobs, our jobs, and after that to privatize our job. So it's clear that the public, the senior people, people with disability, small businesses, and all the union, we're all fighting against that, and we're planning. It's not like a sprint. We were talking at the beginning. This fight is not a sprint. This fight is a marathon. It's the marathon at least until the next election. And the next election in October 2015 to get rid of this Harper government. So we have to resist. There's no way we can resist, but we can go legally. We will do everything we can legally. We're talking about looking about the Canada Post Act. We're talking about looking at trying the collective agreement to stop them. But we know ultimately this fight is a political fight.
That's right.
It's a political fight from the beginning. It's a political fight about the Postal Service, and it's a political fight about the public service, and it's a political fight to keep a better society in this country. It's a political fight, and the only way we can win a political fight is to organize, go get the support of the public, go get the support of the allies in the labor movement, go get the support of the private worker, and really develop like this large coalition of people to save the post office, but to save at the same time, all the same. The attack on the post service, maybe it's more visible. It's more visible, but what's happening in the federal government, what's happening? They're cutting jobs, but it's more visible. The Postal Service, it can be used as an example to rally people around and make sure that all together we can win that fight. So that's the goal, that's a political, but at the same time, we know when we say, okay, no to door-to-door, cutting door-to-door delivery, when we're saying no to cutting services to the public, at the same time, we have to have a vision, to propose something. And I want to talk maybe a couple of minutes about that, because at the same time, in COPW, we always had a view about the future of the Post Service. We are the one who stopped Canada Post to privatize the parcel. We are the one to stop Canada Post to close the post office in small communities and all of that. We fight because we say the most important thing is to maintain the public postal service, to maintain our public services. And that's the fight. And for that, we need some example, or we need some alternative to propose. And one of the alternatives that we propose is the postal bank. It's something maybe new for you. It's happening all over the world. Because we know that the letter is going down. We know the electronic mail is coming. But we know with the e-commerce, there's some new service coming in about delivering mail. We have a project, we push Canada Post to have a project here in Toronto around the issue of same-day delivery. But we push the e-commerce, but we say at the same time, a postal bank can be something important in Canada. It's happening in Europe, in France, in Italy, in UK, in Switzerland, all the industrialized countries, they put that out that we will have a bank, and it's profitable. And Canada Post, they did a study, and they don't want to share that study. They don't want to share because it seemed in the study, they said it can be a win-win situation. So we will try to have this study to really show to the public that there was other way to maintain the public service, to maintain it self-sufficient, because that's always been our goal, to have a self-sufficient postal service. But the postal bank, and why a postal bank? People always say in Canada we have the six big banks. Why a postal bank? Maybe a couple of questions. Do you know how many people don't have a bank account in Canada? Many? More than 1 million people in this country don't have a bank account. Do you know how many Aboriginal reserve don't have a bank? All of them, except 60 out of 10% of them have bank. Do you know how much people are paying to send money, immigrants to send money in their countries? Every year, it's unbelievable. Western Union, Money Mark, all these groups are making money out of people. And they take, when people are sending remittance, they're sending money overseas. They pay 10, 12, 15% of the amount they send. Postal bank can do that kind of work. That's what the postal bank. So a postal bank can be a service everywhere because there's more than 2,000 communities in this country who don't have banks. But a postal bank can be a good service, can compete with the larger bank, because people are saying, okay, what are the fees that people are paying every year? When I do all my expense and all my payments by internet or to the bank, directly to the bank. Now it's almost $200 that every person is paying every year to have a bank account and say, oh no, it's free. I'm doing, no, it's never free. The bank are turning around and the administrative fee, why they are making billions of dollars every year? It's because of every citizen of this country, instead of paying his bill sometime with putting a stamp of 63 cents until the end of March, they go directly to the bank, and at some point it's 7%, 6%, and at the end it's about $200. We had a survey from CCPA why Canada Post need a postal bank, and we explained in this why they need a postal bank. It's a postal bank but at the same time, it's a social bank. It's a social bank, it's something used by the average person in this country, and people don't have access to these big banks because they don't make enough money, because they don't have all the time an address where they can be reached, because they're moving from city to other city to go for the job in this country. So that's the fight. So we are proposing fighting to maintain a good price of the stamp, but really something with respectful of people, fighting to stop the door-to-door delivery, but at the same time to put something like a postal bank and really innovate, new innovation for the postal service, and use the larger network of the country. Who is the postal network? The larger network in this country is postal. So it can be used. And one of the points we're pushing more and more to respect the environment, it's what we call the last kilometer. That there's only one vehicle going to the address, not 5 or 6. What's happening now, it can be UPX, can be TNT, DHL, can be Dynamex, can be Canada Post. But at the end, why, if we respect the environment, there's not a possibility that all of that can be organized and we have only one vehicle going to one address. So we're fighting, and we know we can win. We can win, we have to win that fight, because it's the fight to really make sure that all together we can have a society that is our society. So that's the fight we have, and we have this view about the future of the post office, and we're sure during this upcoming weeks and months that all together, all in this country, Barry was talking about having town halls. We already start having town halls, go and meet with the MPs. We already start going with the MPs. We occupy some of the MPs' offices to make sure. We occupy the one of Lisa Raitt, Minister responsible for the Post Service. So we're going to continue to do that, to make aware the public that it's the post office, but it's more than that. It's more than that. It's all the public service that we have. It's the fight to maintain a respectful society, respect the people and respect the workers. So that's the fight. You will be part of it, I'm sure. You have been part of many years, but we was talking about 40 years in the labor movement. I'm 40 years, but there's a lot of 40 years here, and we'll continue to fight, but there's a lot of people, of new people. So when we're saying, and we finish on that in COPW, we always say the struggle continues, and together we'll make that fight, and we'll work to protect the Postal Service and the postal, all the public service in this country, all together. So thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, confrère Denis. Before I call on the next person to present greetings to this rally, I want to ask you a question, and it's about Deepak Chopra. He's the head of Canada Post, right? Is he CEO?
CEO.
Okay. Did you know that Mr. Deepak Chopra was, before he was CEO at Canada Post, he was the top executive at Pitney Bowes? And that UPS and FedEx and Pitney Bowes and other giant corporations in the communications sector have their eye on Canada Post. They'd like to take the profitable parts of it and exploit them for their own interests. So you have to wonder, whose interests does Mr. Chopra truly represent? And I'm going to unveil a resolution that we'll discuss later. Literally. And you can look at the resolution, but we'll address that in a bit. So now, it's with great pleasure that I introduce the next person to bring greetings to this rally. And he was past president of the Canadian Union of Public Employees Ontario, and the kind of person that you proverbially say needs no introduction, especially at a meeting like this. The president of the Ontario Federation of Labour, please welcome Brother Sid Ryan.
morning, sisters and brothers, and thank you for the invitation to come and say a few words here tonight. It's nice to get a warm introduction. The last week or so, or 2 weeks, I've been called the union boss, and then I got a promotion and I was called the union elite, and then I got another promotion and they called me a government union elite. This was Hudak. But of course, you know, part of what I'm here to talk about tonight and to bring greetings is, of course, the attack on public services, and in this particular case we're talking about the Postal Service. But we just came through a campaign where Hudak is essentially attempting to bring in the same agenda that we've seen at the federal level, where most of the large public sector unions, and indeed even some of the private sector unions, have been taken on by the Harper government. Clearly they're talking about bringing in legislation that effectively takes away the right to free collective bargaining, takes away the right to strike, and of course will eliminate the RAND formula was the goal of Hudak in Ontario. Today, of course, he announces, after having his ass kicked down in Niagara Falls and also in London and also in Kitchener-Waterloo, where we did some severe mobilization of our members to go in and work on the grounds to defeat the Hudak agenda. And anybody who was down in Niagara Falls will know what I'm talking about. They had full page colour ads in the newspapers. They had billboards all out throughout the city. They had TV ads funded by the Merit Association, who are a collection of building associations across Canada, with the exception of Quebec. They were funding this campaign together with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. So you can see they had a fairly serious campaign. They so desperately wanted to win this particular riding. And the reason, of course, was because it's in Tim Hudak's backyard, and in addition he was born and raised in Fort Erie, which makes up half of the riding. So he had to win this to have any degree of credibility with some of his backbenchers who are desperately afraid that they would lose elections, particularly if we could beat Hudak in his own backyard. They would start to get very skittish. So we put together a campaign that deliberately targeted this particular riding. And by the way, having said that, I have my differences and my problems with the NDP, and I'm not going to go through all that here tonight. It's not the purpose of tonight. But I've got serious problems when the leader of the party doesn't stand up and support the $14 an hour minimum wage campaign. When the private members bill was brought in the other day, contracting out the services of the OPSU brothers and sisters, and asked for some comments, and the response going back was no comment. So I've got some serious concerns with our own party. But in this particular instance, it was good and better for us to be able to go down to Niagara Falls and mobilize the membership base to beat Hudak in his own backyard. And I think the results today bears fruit, or bears witness to the fact that the campaign did bear some fruit, and we did, and it proved that we can mobilize our membership. Now, I'm saying all of this only in the sense that we also have another public service, which of course is what we're here to talk about tonight, is the Postal Service. And we all know, of course, it's the only country in the G7 that have actually walked away from the urban delivery of mail anywhere in the G7. We know that there are roughly 65 countries in the world that have banking services delivered through the post office. I see John Clark sitting over here, and he'll know, and I know, because we both lived basically, well, he lived in England, I lived in Ireland, but we both grew up with the post office offering financial services and banking services, savings accounts and so on. And in France, they make 60% of their profits come directly out of the banking service. So I think it would be a wonderful development if we could go back, by the way, to where we were. Back in the 1990s, we had a publicly operated banking service in this country until the Tories eliminated it. So we could go back to that, and it is one possibility that has been put forward by the CUPW that I think we ought to be able to work around and mobilize around. But the other side of it is, when you take a look at what happened in Niagara and those other by-elections, I'm a great believer in what I refer to as boots on the ground. And it's people that win elections. It's not the stupid ads, and in some cases it might help to indoctrinate people or formulate some of their opinions maybe. But at the end of the day, elections are won by knocking on doors and putting people on the streets, and campaigns are the same thing. You've got to take advantage of the opportunities when they come your way. And here we've got an absolute glorious opportunity to mobilise people around 5 million households. And it's not just 5 million Canadians, it's 5 million households. And when you multiply that times 2 or 3 people in each household, that's a huge amount of folks are impacted by the gutting of this service. And we have an opportunity. I'll just give you an example of, we were on strike and I was in Coopy up in Thunder Bay, and they were bringing in scabs. And they had about 1,500 workers in the city of Thunder Bay. And we were walking around in circles like we normally do sometimes, and we're on picket lines, scratching our arses, to be frank about it, and getting nowhere, until we decided, you know, this is ridiculous. Why aren't we using the 1,500 members that we've got? And every second day we should develop a flyer and we should walk it into every single home in Thunder Bay. Instead of walking around the picket line, let's put our own members to work. And we did that. You know, within a week we turned a public opinion around. The public began demanding that the scabs get out of town. The mayor came out basically and said we're prepared to put enough gas in the trucks of the scabs that had come into town to get them out of town and never come back again. It was amazing. So, you know, so a tremendous success because we actually utilised turned a negative into an advantage. And here we've got 5 million households, beginning in Oakville in a couple of weeks' time, I believe, the first one up. And we've got postal workers who walk and deliver and knock on doors for a living. So they're well able and well accustomed and have the know-how and the knowledge to be able to pull together a campaign that directly speaks to Canadians on the doorstep. And that's worth its weight in gold. It's better than any advertising campaign that you could possibly put together. And if you can build that with the rest of the Labour movement and our other allies out there, we could have one hell of a campaign that would put the boots to Harper in the next election. So I really think there's an opportunity there. But it's going to take some sitting down and some planning. Like, you know, we've got a war room right now over at the OFL, planning to take on Hudak in the next election and planning that event that took place just recently. But it takes a lot of planning. It's not just going to happen through osmosis, where union leaders of their own volition are going to come up and stand up and say, yeah, we're going to mobilise all of our members around this issue. You're going to have to sit down and be strategic and plan it, you know, and it's painstaking at times and it's hard at times. I went down to, just to give you an example, we went down last night we're doing these focus groups. And the essence of our campaign to take on Hudak, first off, is a recognition that we have Tories in our ranks. We didn't select our union members. You know, if we did, you know, and I don't know what happened to you folks, so you managed to get through the screen that they put up. But they actually screen out and they select folks, and obviously they select people that's the makeup of the population. So we assume we've got 35% of the membership base in Canada are Tories. And our campaign is based on, we're going to go after those Tories because they've got a self-interest. And that self-interest is, they love those pension plans. They love those benefits. They love those higher wages. They don't want to pay for it, of course, and they want the tax breaks. That's why they vote for the Tories. But in this particular instance, if we were to be able to go out and find what is it that makes a unionist that's a Tory vote for the Tories, and what will actually turn them, or what will stop them from going out to the polls to vote this time around, to vote in their own self-interest, what are those issues? So we did some focus group testing, and I tell you, folks, it's scary. We've done 3 or 4 of them right now. And the level of knowledge of our union members about RAND formulas and about the issues that we're fighting for, it's zero. It's zero. Like, and I'm talking about, there was some very well-educated people in the room. One of the focus groups had like 4 teachers, a university professor, and you know, a whole bunch of them. And you would think, wait a second, at least they should know, they'd be informed. Nope. Nope, they knew nothing about the RAND formula, they knew nothing about the issues that we're fighting for here. Some of them couldn't even recognize there was photographs put up on the wall of Hudak, Andrea Horvath, and Jesus, what's the previous name?
It's a no-win situation.
Nobody knew, you know, I'm saying nobody knew, but some of them didn't even know who they were. It was incredible. Like, the level of knowledge is pretty shallow and thin out there. So it means that when I listened there last week, we had a heads of unions meeting. And all the heads of unions all stood up and they all talked about what a great job they're doing out there, mobilising their members. We've had all these meetings, and well, it didn't come across in these focus groups that they had these meetings and that they were talking directly to their members and that they were giving them the information. So clearly we have a lot of work to do, a lot of work to do. And I just have to think that, you know, putting together this campaign has got to be the primary focus, I think, of the Labour movement going into the next election, because we can mobilise around the Postal Service and CUPW like never an issue that we've ever had before. So I'll put that out there, and hopefully we can have a debate and have a discussion about how can we bring all the different parts of the Labour movement together to see this as the campaign that we all get behind in the next election. Thanks, folks, for giving me an opportunity to say a few words.
We have a lot of work to do, and one bit of the work can be done around the action that we're proposing, that we'll be discussing before the evening is out. And I hope that the OFL and other organizations represented here will think about how they can help us to make that a success. So the next person bringing greetings to this rally comes from the other federal union that is bearing the brunt of the assault of the Tory anti-worker agenda. If you're familiar at all with the federal budget, it had written on it as a target the Public Service Alliance of Canada, shamefully targeted by this government of the corporate elite. But here to speak about her union's fight back in solidarity with the postal workers is the Regional Executive Vice President for Ontario of the Public Service Alliance of Canada. Please join me in welcoming Sisters Sharon D'Souza.
Okay, I'm a little short, I admit it. I'm challenged here. Thank you. Good evening, sisters and brothers, comrades, friends. I'm sorry. Good evening, sisters and brothers and comrades. For one thing, I want to say to you is thank you very much for coming out this evening. I know a lot of you are workers, a lot of you are just family, community members who are concerned as to what's going on with this federal government and the decisions that they're making. I bring you greetings on behalf of 180,000 workers across Canada, and 1,600 of them have Canada Post Corporation as an employer. And I can tell you, it's a really shitty employer. You see, sisters and brothers, comrades, friends, this employer has targeted these 1,600 individuals time and time again through their bargaining process. They've gone after their severance, they've gone after their sick leave, and you better believe pensions is their next target. And if you think this is something new for just that group, it's not. It is what's happening to our brothers and sisters at CUPW. It's what's happening to federal government workers. And you may ask the question, well, I don't have that, so why does it matter to me? But here's the reality. The federal government sets the standards for employment, which means that if we all have pensions, then you can ask for pensions for your employer. And why should we all have pensions? Why should it just be a select few? But that's not the framework that this government is using. The framework is because you don't, no one shall.
That's right.
And that's not the Canada that we built. The Canada that we built is built on possibilities, where everyone should have the same rights. You see, sisters and brothers, comrades, friends, in the last year, we've seen 22,000 jobs being taken out of the public sector. Those are people who deliver services for employment insurance, Canada Pension Plan, Old Age Security, veterans. They've closed down 2 major veterans offices in Ontario, one in Thunder Bay and one in Windsor. Those veterans who fought for human rights, World War I, World War II, who've gone through traumatic events, now look to their government to provide them with services. And they don't have that anymore. They have to travel 2 hours if they're from Windsor to London. If they're from Thunder Bay, that's 11 hours to North Bay. That's a shame.
Yes.
Now we look at our brothers and sisters at CUPW. Is there any rhyme or reason to stop door-to-door delivery or the increase in the stamp? The answer is no. There's always a solution. But the only solution that this government is looking to is on the backs of Canadians. Because those are the ones who are going to suffer. It's not Harper and his cronies or his political allies. It's everyone, you and me, those who live every day of our lives and ask the question, what does this government do for me? Does it reflect me? The answer is no, it doesn't. Otherwise, they would not be making decisions. Our brothers at CUPW are in for a fight, and I can tell you PSAC is definitely standing behind you, without a doubt. But you see, it's not just the unions that need to stand behind each other, it's Canadians at large. You see what they say when we speak? Oh, it's just the unions wanting to maintain what they have, but it's not. If we did not have the unions, we would not have good jobs. Good jobs that give you benefits, that give you the ability to fight on a political context, to say, look, you know, a lot of the fights that we take on is not regarding our own members. We fight for minimum wage. We just did a presentation to, I can tell you, the Ontario Finance Minister, Charles Sousa, about raising the minimum wage to $14. This doesn't affect our 60,000 members that work in Ontario, but it affects their family and their friends in their community. And that's what union stands for. It stands for building a community and building a way of life that we desperately need in this economic times. So when I say to you, we stand behind CUPW, it's not just that we're standing behind them, we're willing to take on this fight as well. And what I ask each and every one of you is to go back, talk to your family, talk to your friends, and visit your MPs and demand they reinstate door-to-door delivery. It's not just the political action and the conversations, as Brother Sid Ryan has stated, but it has to be in conjunction with each other. Those conversations need to go somewhere. And what I say is, it'll definitely be there in 2015 at the Voters Walk, but in the meantime, we still have 1.5 years to go. And sisters and brothers, we can't let this time last without a fight. So I do stand behind CUPW. I can tell you our members stand behind them as well, and I ask all of you to do as well. Thank you.
Okay, next we were going to hear from a vice president of the Ontario Public Service Employees Union, Miles Magner, but he came down with some kind of grunge. He's got an illness, a bad cold, so I'm going to call on Julius Arscott, who is vice president of OPSU Local 532. I got it right this time. Yep. I used to be an OPSU. Anyway, I'm going to call on him to convey greetings on behalf of his union and on behalf, I think you have a message from Miles.
Yeah.
Great, here you go.
Greetings, sisters and brothers, comrades and friends. Just have a short message here from Miles, who, as Barry said, couldn't make it. So he just asked that we accept his apologies for missing tonight's rally, and to give our special guests, especially Mother Lemelin and our sisters and brothers in the CUPW, his regrets for missing this event tonight. He would also like to let folks know in the CUPW that they can count on the solidarity and support of OPSU, our executive board members and rank and file members and activists in the fight to stop the outrageous cuts to services, layoffs, and possible privatization of Canada Post, and in the broader fight to defend quality public services, good jobs, and workers' rights in Canada. These rights include our hard-fought right to organize, our right to free collective bargaining, and our right to strike. We need to remember that these rights were first won for public sector workers with the courage and leadership of CUPW members. And now we need to stand together to prevent right-wing governments, whether in Ottawa, at Queen's Park, or at City Hall, from taking them away. Finally, we need to build the kind of labor and community solidarity we need to start rolling back the austerity agenda and standing up for the rights of all working people in both the private and public sectors. This includes the right to decent jobs, fair wages, stronger programs like EI, social assistance and the CPP, and the quality public services our communities need. We look forward to working with the CPW and all of the folks here in the room in building this fight back. In solidarity, Miles Magner, Regional Vice President, OPSU.
Thanks very much, Julius. Next, I'm pleased to call upon a leader of Unite Here. It's Local 75, which is a big local, a big organization of workers in this city. She is currently a shop steward at the University of Toronto. How appropriate, since we're holding the meeting here at the U of T St. George campus. She is one of the people who organized the Union of Campus Food Service Workers. Please join me in welcoming Sister Valerie Gaynor. It's like the Academy Awards. It's a long walk. A few high fives along the way. And here she is, Valerie Gaynor. Welcome.
Good evening, sisters and brothers.
Good evening.
Hi. I work at the U of T, and I'm here just to say a few words about Canada Post. And my problem is this bothers me a lot because where I live, there's a lot of seniors that live in my area and poor people. And we all support Canada Post. And most people, they get their letter door to door, and we don't know what's going to happen to the workers too. You know, they need a job, and it's mostly poor people that need a job. And we're here to let Stephen Alper know. I'm just going to sing a little song and let him know we're going to sing. Get up, stand up for your rights. Get up, stand up, don't give up the fight. We're coming at you, Stephen Alper.
The spirit of Bob Marley will live forever. Next, I want to call on another one of the folks who we proverbially say needs no introduction. He is the provincial organizer for the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty, Brother John Clark.
Thank you very much. I think whatever Miles has been fighting with this week, I've been succumbing to too, so took on my last legs, and I think it's beyond that. It's beyond that infection point. But
Okay.
if I'm a little unfocused, I apologise. In any event, I wanted to just bring greetings and solidarity to the meeting too. And I think as we present the issues here, it becomes clear that the attack on the postal service in this country and the attack on postal workers is very much part of a broader attack. An attack that has come to be known as the austerity agenda.
Yes.
And the point about watching that thing unfold, and we're living through it, is that as it unfolds, it's clearly a work in progress. They're redefining it and they're intensifying it as they go. Back in 2010, the International Monetary Fund was calling for 20 years of austerity, and just a short while ago, David Cameron, the Prime Minister of Britain, stood up fittingly at the Lord Mayor's banquet and said that austerity was now, in fact, a permanent way of rearranging society. And this is the government that just recently privatised the Royal Mail, a postal service that's been in existence for some 500 years. Privatised the Royal Mail, and very interestingly, that the Tory-led coalition in Britain privatises the Royal Mail, when the proposal was put to Margaret Thatcher, she said that would be a step too far. And
For her.
yeah, I think that's an indication of the reality of the situation we're living in. Because today, it's not a step too far to privatise the Royal Mail. It's not a step too far for Canada to be the first G7 country to abolish home delivery. They're redefining the agenda and they're intensifying the agenda as they go. And the full viciousness and arrogance of what they're doing really comes home to us. By what right would these people dare to impose on the communities of this country a situation where people, elderly people, poor people, disabled people, have to go out and retrieve their mail in the elements? What sort of an arrogance leads to that? And there is no question that that's going to produce an enormous amount of anger, an enormous amount of outrage. And I think people are right when they say that that gives us a real focus and a real opportunity in terms of mobilising and challenging the whole agenda. And I agree with everything people have said about not operating in the old ways, trying to find ways to engage communities, to hold town halls, to educate people, and it's all true. But that has to be linked to, and it has to come down to a bold and decisive plan to resist that agenda and to fight back. And that really is the, I suppose, the message that, above everything else I want to bring, is that there is a recognition in this country that the Postal Service is a vital service. There is also a recognition, whatever they say, there is a recognition of the fact that postal workers have been a real force in society. Without what happened in the 1960s and beyond, Canada would be a very different place. Postal workers have a long and a proud record. Postal workers are in a position to set an example and give a lead that will resonate with many, many people. The austerity agenda is a terrible thing, but I think we're past the point where we need to be intimidated by it. We need to be outraged by it. We need to organise against it. We need to defeat it. This is an opportunity to fight. Let's take up that fight. Thank you.